Welcome to the Sound Off, Mike Matranga.
Thank you. Honor to be here. I appreciate it.
I think school safety through your lens is going to be a fascinating conversation to share with our listeners. We'll get into some of that as folks get to know you. And along those lines, we're going to start with the superpower that you have, part of who you are, and therefore what you bring to this work.
One of my superpowers is that I have a gift of observation. As a child at a very young age, I did have fantastic parents, but went through what I thought was pretty tumultuous divorce. And being in that situation, really, I got very good at observing nonverbal behavior and then making or orienting myself in a way in which I was no longer, or the people that I was with, my loved ones or friends, were not in a position of danger because of my intuitive nature of being able to observe something before it happened. But I think that helped me professionally into my professional career with the United States Secret Service. I always knew that I had that. I still have that, and I do it very, very well.
You do. You do. It explains a lot. Explains a lot. So let's talk about that big jump from Secret Service to school safety. How the heck did that happen?
When I graduated college at Sam Houston, I became an adult probation officer, and I really learned a lot at 21, 22 years old about human behavior, and it fit right in line with what my superpower was. I did that for 3 years, and then I went over to the Secret Service, and I worked my way through the different divisions here in the Houston field office. Where I enjoyed myself the most was in the Protective Intelligence Division, where we would investigate threats towards the president and vice president or any protectees of the Secret Service. I then worked my way through, became a counter assault team operator on the presidential detail, 33 countries, 3 war zones, you name it. And then I had a kind of a reevaluation of what my priorities as a man were. And I had to assess what was more important, is my professional goals or my personal goals to be a better father. And the job, as much as I loved it, and I still love it, and I miss it every day, it didn't allow me to be as present as I wanted to be. And so I made the decision to leave and go to a different agency. And I went out to Department of Interior and was assigned to the Joint Terrorism Task Force. And then the Mandalay Bay shooting happened tragically on October 1st, 2017. And I had a search and rescue mission there. And I saw the impact of mass shootings, 500 plus wounded, 57 deceased, having to be an individual that told someone that their significant other, that their spouse was deceased, and having to find that individual had an impact on me. And so, you fast forward till February of 18, and then again in May of 2018, where you had the Parkland shooting and the Santa Fe High School shooting, which is here locally. I got into school security because of Santa Fe. I'm from Galveston County, Santa Fe, and my old high school, the superintendent contacted me 3 days after Santa Fe and just said, I don't know what I'm doing. I know you're from here. Would you consider taking a position in K-12? And I I took the job on the spot, over the phone, and kind of got thrown right into it. First day on the job was June 11th of 2018. It was shortly after Santa Fe, not even a month later. And I was testifying before the Texas Senate on what later became Senate Bill 11, and have helped write multiple other pieces of legislation. And so we took Texas City ISD from zero security to rank number 1 in the state, number 5 in the nation, due to the preventative and proactive nature of my philosophy moving forward. I made a lot of mistakes. Admittedly, I made mistakes that I try to tell people now. Learn from my mistakes. You have to have a plan. It needs to be slow. It needs to be methodical. It needs to be well thought out. It needs to be focused on prevention and proactiveness instead of gadgets. And hopefully it's resonating.
I think it's resonating. I see it working, but I think that's a good place to dig in because a lot of people step into this field ready to be a change agent and have big ideas and dramatic ideas, which, we need all ideas at this point. I know probably in 2018, stepping into that role, you were going to turn the truck upside down and take it apart and then put it all back together. And you learn pretty quickly. And maybe that's what you're kind of referring to in terms of those mistakes. But when we're willing to own them and share them with others, it's incredibly valuable.
the biggest mistakes that we make in the K-12 space is that we think that improving our physical security posture, adding additional law enforcement resources, that those are going to be the things that are going to prevent this. But I don't care how strong you build those buildings or how many police officers you put in those buildings. The simple fact is that none of those gauge the intentions of the heart. I tell people all the time, if an individual is intent on causing harm, they're going to do it if you don't intervene earlier. And you can have, a fortress, but and if they know that they can't get into that fortress and they have a target of opportunity outside of that building, which 62% of cases happen, or incidents involving gun violence happen from the front door to the parking lot, they're going to conduct that violence right there in the parking lot. It's statistically proven. And
Mm-hmm.
so what I tell people all the time is you've got to look at the preventative and the proactive pieces. You have to look at empirical data that tells us where we need to be focusing our attention. And there is no product that's going to prevent that. We've got to get better as people at monitoring people's behavior. And in 2018, when I would talk like this, people would say, well, Mike, you want to profile kids. Yes and no. We know that in all of these cases, kids that have had excessive absences, that have had some type of socioeconomic incident in their life, some type of social decline, bullying or grievance, they're the ones that are carrying out these attacks, whether it be on themselves or somebody else. And like I said earlier, I made a lot of mistakes. One of the mistakes that I made coming in was assuming that because of my background and experience with the Secret Service and in preventative nature, or the preventative nature of the protective intelligence and the things that we did, that people were just going to listen. And though they listened, my approach was completely different. I came in very hot. I came in with a
No,
response.
not you, Mike Matranga.
Yeah. I came in with a very responsive. I knew the prevention piece, but I didn't realize at the time how important it really was in the K-12 space. And so it took me about a year to realize, like, oh, wait, I need to slow it down a little bit. Let's pump the brakes. The bond was forcing me to take these preventative measures from a physical security perspective. And I've said on record time and time again, of the $6.5 million budget that I had, if I could have taken 3.5 to 4 million of that, and if I could have, hired more counselors, if I could have hired literally behavioral analysts that would be able to process our student information systems data to identify these kids that are on this pathway, that's what I would have done, because it would have been more effective. And so the problem is like I said, parents and politicians, they don't know the industry, they don't know the culture, they don't know the climate. They assume that a law enforcement officer on campus is going to prevent something. If you take the Appalachia High School shooting, there were 2 individual officers on that campus. It still took them 8 minutes to get that individual to surrender, but only after 4 people were deceased and 9 were wounded. Mom's on the phone from 9:45 to 10 with the administrator telling them he's going to do something. He's on campus. He's armed.
This is kind of an example of this call comes in and then it goes through this kind of like chain of, all right, we'll send an administrator, right? So administrators are now going through the building looking for him. Who should have been called right then and there?
Well, they should have been put in a hold.
100%. So it's kind of
Everybody
like,
should have just stayed still.
yeah. So first things first, right? Let's secure everybody. Let's put the hold on. But then instead of maybe sending administrators out on their own, we've got 2 SROs in the building, right? Who are trained to look at this situation a little differently than an administrator, right? I want to go back to just acknowledge to listeners as we talk about Appalachia and we talk about some of the circumstances around that. We're not being Monday morning quarterbacks,
No.
always looking at these these horrific tragedy events, ours included at Sandy Hook, as opportunities to think a little bit differently about how we could do better next time, knowing that there were real people making the best decisions that they were equipped and trained to make in that situation. And so certainly by no means trying to throw people under the bus. It's important to look at opportunities to do better. And I think as it pertains to this conversation about people and a people empowering culture that you're advocating for, that conversation is incredibly valuable. When we have empowered people to speak up, to work together, to address threats and concerns together, and they know their lanes, they know their rules. Like an administrator needs to know, when we're talking about a firearm, okay, this is now above my pay grade and the training that I have, I'm gonna need to reach out to law enforcement for this. Just want to acknowledge that it's a community that's very much still in pain and suffering, and it's our job to make sure that that doesn't happen, that we learn from each and every one of our mistakes to try to do better.
So this proves my point, is that, do I believe SROs are important? Yes, I believe SROs are important, but I would tell you they're not a priority. Not before the behavioral aspect, not before the proactive and preventative aspect of being able to have resources and solutions in place for these kids to go when they have a grievance with another kid, because we know that grievances are the number one cause of these people wanting to harm. That's where we win and lose this battle. That's the truth. The problem is that K-12, they don't have advocates like me. I mean, I'm an advocate, obviously, you're an advocate, but our voices get drowned out by, companies that are selling a product that's, one, it's unproven, it's not needed, and it's responsive in nature. Mm-hmm. But those individuals that are coming from the law enforcement, military, or tactical perspective need to understand the culture of K-12, which they do not.
Yep.
Most of the time, a lot of those are more traumatizing than they are beneficial.
100%. I want to get back to what you said about SROs too. I think that in many of our cases, in the moment of crisis or an act of violence, the quicker we can make that police response time, the better. But if it's gotten that far, then we're in response mode. And honestly, where I see the value of SROs so much greater than the response is that preventative piece that you talk about. So where schools are using the SROs as prevention, where SROs are building relationships with students who maybe we have kind of looked at risk factors and said, this kiddo has it's going through a lot. There's a lot going on here. Let's maybe wrap some supports around this kid. Let's make a concerted effort to build relationships with this kid. You talked about kind of looking at what behavioral data we have that might just kind of throw a flag and say, there may or may not be something here, but why wouldn't we? When we know this kid is dealing with 5, 6 different things that are potentially, stressful in their lives, let's focus on the prevention. Let's wrap some extra supports around. And so I feel like that, in terms of the SRO, how the SROs are used in a highly effective way, is that preventative piece.
I think the problem is twofold. I mean, when you look at SROs, I'm a government guy, so I like acronyms, right? With SROs, that's the 2 R's. It's relationship and responsiveness, right? Mm-hmm. Those are their primary goals of being on campus, right? Is building those relationships and then being there to cut down on that response time so that they can address something in the event that they've missed something. They can address it in immediate fashion, right? Or as fast as they can. But even then, I think that sometimes educators actually do a disservice to the SRO, because what I've seen in a lot of cases is that educators utilize the SRO as a tool, a punitive tool.
Yes.
And that's completely contrary to what the intention of them being there is they're there to enforce the rules, to enforce the law, not the rules.
As an educator, it's like, no, you don't get to pass the buck. That's not what a school resource officer is there for. And if you're using them in that capacity, if your school community is using the SRO as the bad cop, right, then that's got to stop tomorrow. That's got to stop
Yeah,
today.
I absolutely believe in SROs. I don't want anybody to think that I don't. I think that throughout the United States that they're used in multiple different capacities, and
Yeah.
we need to have a clear line and delineation of what their responsibilities and what their purpose is, because depending upon what state or what district, they could be used in multiple different fashions. You and I both know that the Secret Service has identified that one of the most effective things for a child is to have, one or two solid people that they can trust, that they can go to in the event of a crisis if they're having an issue. And that could be a plethora of things. And that's what the goal of the SRO is to be that trusted voice. And when they're being utilized as a tool punitively by the administration, they're not going to approach them. They're not going to, when they see them as the bad guy, that becomes a problem.
The more we can set the campus up and set people up with the measures that they will need to better communicate or lock down, or those are wonderful things. But it still comes down to the people, no matter how you want to talk about school safety. We're getting nowhere if we don't have that culture of safety that you talked about, where we have trusted relationships, where we have collaboration among educators and counselors and law enforcement and public safety, and literally everybody is a part of this. As part of that, what will we do to empower everybody, from the student to the bus driver to the secretary to the nurse to the cafe staff to the teacher to the parent? What kinds of things have you seen, and even I know you've done, to really empower everybody in the school community to be part of this? Because we know it's going to take everybody.
We need to allow people and empower them to know that they can make decisions. They don't have to wait on someone else to make decisions for them.
Yeah.
That if there's something in front of you, whether it be a child that you've noticed their behavior is changed significantly and it's outside of their normal behavior, that if you don't take the initiative to engage that or report that, who will? Because
Yeah.
it after every one of these tragic events, and I'm not just saying active shootings, I'm talking about suicides also. There's always this post conversation that talks about, yeah, he was acting weird, or he was doing this, or she was doing this. But at that point, they've either harmed someone else or they've harmed themselves. It's too late. So I ask people all the time is, if you don't feel that you're empowered to take action, ask yourself the follow-up question is, can you live with the fact that you knew something was wrong and you didn't do something?
Mm-hmm.
Can you live with that on your conscience? I know that I couldn't.
No.
And so I think administrators need to give permission to their staff. You have permission to take action. And that is the first step of empowering anybody. It doesn't matter if it's on an elementary campus, a K-12 campus, or university, or the corporate environment, is giving people permission to take action when they know intuitively that something's wrong. The people are 100% going to be what is the difference between success and failure. There is no camera that is going to be able to detect a kid that's in crisis. It's only going to record the crisis. It's the people that you've empowered, that you've given that permission to take action on campus, that are going to be the ones that are going to win or lose the battle. Let's train individuals to a certain standard. Let's get them to where they feel confident that when they report, that there's going to be a sustainable process of investigative follow through. That it's not just going to get pushed under the rug, or it's not going to just someone else saying that it's not my responsibility, or they're taking people for their word like they did in Appalachia. That was a perfect example. That officer, he didn't know any different. He shows up to interview a kid who's possibly making threats. The kid denies it. That case ended right there. But we know that there was never a threat assessment conducted.
Mm-mm.
There was never any forensics examination of that kid's computer or his Discord to be able to determine, did he say this stuff? If they would have done that, very well could have intervened, and there could have been 4 people alive today and 9 not wounded. But it's the people part that matter. Do I believe that technology and physical security are a component of a holistic plan? Absolutely, I do. But they're not the foundational component. Those are the finishes. You can't have finishes to a house before you have a foundation built.
So list the foundational items. What are they?
That's having an empowered staff. It's having a reporting mechanism, not only for parents and community to report anonymously, but that's empowering your teachers to have their own mechanism to be able to report when they see a kid that's exhibiting unusual behavior, whether it be nonverbal or verbal communication. It could be something as simple as it looks like they haven't had a bath in a week, or they're
Yep.
wearing the same clothes. These are the foundational things that we have to get down to the basics. We can't continue to get lost in the bright, flashy, shiny things, right? It's having a plan, like I said, it's knowing the plan. It's the person who is responsible for that plan not needing to refer to it or hold it in their hand to be able to make command decisions.
Yeah.
It's flipping through that 5 minutes a day, just that repetitive action, so that when something happens, I don't need to look at a book. I can go, hey, my emergency landing zone is here. My casualty collection point is here. My decontamination area is here. This is how we're going to reunify. This is where we're going to set up our police staging, our fire, EMS, and medical staging. It's having someone who's trained to do that. It's having counselors on staff, enough of them, and having them trained not only in academic counseling, but behavioral counseling. It's having a behavioral threat assessment team, not just at the district level, but at every campus level, because it's important that those people that are assessing that child's behavior know that child. There's nobody who knows that child better than the people that are on that campus. A person at the central office doesn't know that child. They don't know their circumstance. It's having someone process data, looking at those discipline, the attendance rating or decline in attendance over a short period of time. It's the social cues. Those are the foundational components that really, in the grand scheme of things, when you look at it, those are the things that are less cost prohibitive.
Yep.
Right? Those are the things where we win and lose this battle.
The first priority is the people, right? It's everyone trained as an observer, everyone empowered to speak up. I don't maybe have the solution for my classmate who appears to not have had a shower in 3 weeks and is wearing the same clothes for 3 weeks, but I'm going to bring it forward so that some intervention for this person comes to be. The point you make about administrators too is one that sticks with me. I know this is hard. I was on the administrative track myself. And so much of that role requires you to try to be in control of and to be reinforcing compliance and rules and procedures and policies and all of that. And so the last thing anybody wants is to have to find out that somebody's gone rogue, right? And so it's this culture of compliance that we have in schools that makes that inherently challenging for administrators to let go of and to have a conversation with the rest of school staff and even students that if we are in a crisis, all of the polite rules of our everyday are gone. Like they've literally been sucked out of the atmosphere. They are gone. And we are now a crisis site, right? It's not a school anymore. And so you see this thing happening in real time in front of you that sends the hair up on the back of your neck. And you know what? Little Miss Hartman in the second grade, you don't have to call the front office to tell them about it. You have to call 911. You are empowered in that moment. If you are wrong, it will be great news if you're wrong. And we will handle that afterwards. But you must be empowered to that level for staff members to call the lockdown, call 911, make the call right then and there. So having said that, Mike, we have covered a lot of ground today. I want to give you the opportunity to leave us with a takeaway, leave us with a call to action, a pearl of wisdom, a Mikeism that we can take back to our schools and communities and look at school safety maybe a little bit differently, be change agents in our own community and be builders of that kind of culture that you're describing. So it's your chance to sound off, Mike Matranga.
what we need to do as a society is understand a couple things. We need to understand is that it's okay for us to have civil discourse, but it's important for us to highlight the civility piece, right? We can disagree all day long, but we need to maintain civility. In the end, who's going to save us is ourselves being informed and prepared. And more than likely, it's going to be your neighbor who you may or may not have an agreement with on politics or religion. And so I say that to say this is that in the K-12 space, I think one of the biggest mistakes that we make is we solely focus on active shootings.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important as administrators and as security professionals to look at statistics. And what the statistics will tell us is that active shooting events are the least likely event to happen. So why are we not talking about violence in general? I think if we go into building a program for those in which we're responsible for, our stakeholders, our parents, our students, our staff, that reduces violence in general, bullying, dating violence, suicidal ideation, self-harm, grievances, that if we holistically look at reducing violence in general, we're already going to take that minute statistic of an active shooting event. We're going to reduce that even further. And what we're doing in that process by reducing violence is we're creating a safer environment for not only your staff, but for your students, which then spills over into your community. And so I would tell people, don't let the hype and the hysteria draw you into spending money on products and procedures and things that you don't need. Let's look at what your needs are holistically. Let's build out a plan based upon the foundational components of threat intervention and mitigation by empowering your people. If you do that in that order, you will be successful. You will probably be one of the most successful K-12 environments within your area. The goal is to get our entire nation to think that way, but it's going to take all of us to come together to do it.
Well said, Mike Matranga. I'm so grateful to have you as a partner in this journey, and I'm so grateful that you took some time to share your thoughts with our larger community here at the Sound Off. So this has been Mike Matranga with all of us at the Sound Off today. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Mike.